pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Lathrop?
Here.
Maxbauer? Here. Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas?
Yep.
Inman?
Here.
Rennie?
Here.
Chairman Limco?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
McKellar?
Here.
Nelson?
Yes.
Mauser?
Here.
Taylor?
Absent and excused. He had another commitment. He could not make it tonight.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, we'll have presentation, questions, and discussions. And our administrator, Dave Benda, will be taking that lead on that. So, Dave, it's up to you.
I don't know if it's too close or if it's not close enough, or maybe you could tell me if everybody can hear me.
Needs to be up a little bit louder.
A little bit louder. I think I can get a little bit closer. As you know, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality has identified the Boardman and Sabin dams as high hazard potential dams. And recent dam inspections have identified the Boardman Dam as in poor condition and the Sabin Dam in satisfactory condition after the drawdown of water from the Boardman and Sabin ponds. The county entered into a consent agreement with the DEQ in 2007 that called for the removal of the Boardman Dam by December 31st, 2012. Consent agreement was made to fulfill condition C of a FERC document, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission document, entitled Order Approving Conditional Surrender of License and Exemptions, which was issued on March 17, 2006. In 2009, the City of Traverse City and Great Traverse County decided, after a lengthy and significant public input process, to remove the Brown Bridge, the Boardman, and the Sabin dams, and to effect modifications to the Union Street Dam. The city and the county created an implementation team, also known as the IT, composed of representatives of local, state, and federal agencies that would be involved in the project to do just that, to carry out the process of removing the three dams and modifying Union Street. It was understood by the IT, based upon the actions of the County Board of Commissioners at that time, that the removal of the Boardman Dam would involve the replacement of the Cass Road Bridge. And in 2011, the Road Commission approved an application for critical bridge funds from the Michigan Department of Transportation to replace the Cass Road Bridge. The grant has been approved. The Road Commission, I believe, last night discussed that and decided to accept that grant.
That's correct.
And that will require a 5% local match plus design costs. And the Army Corps of Engineers has already done a feasibility study and an environmental assessment on the dam and the rerouting of the river. So everything is ready to move forward with the Boardman Dam and the Cass Road Bridge replacement. And before the Road Commission and County make a decision to move forward, the respective boards wanted to review where we are with replacing, and to see if replacing the Cass Road Bridge is the best alternative from a local and regional transportation perspective. There's been significant discussion over a period of years regarding the need for an additional east-west corridor to relieve traffic congestion, particularly on Airport Road. A federal grant for that project was approved a number of years ago, but community decision makers abandoned the idea after many contentious public meetings and threats of lawsuits. They used some of the funding to finance the grand vision. There was an environmental assessment done in 1999 that pretty much dismissed the Cass Road Bridge as an option that would significantly impact the regional transportation issue of an east-west corridor, but it also suggested that the Cass Road Bridge was an important part of the local transportation system. There's been discussion recently about the possibility of extending Cass Road by obtaining title to the railroad right-of-way from Cass Road to Williams Road, alleviating the need to cross the river at all. We were asked to bring back pros and cons for each of these scenarios. And as we begin to look at each scenario, the three being retain or remove the Cass Road Bridge, to look at a Hartman-Hammond bypass, or to go down and connect Cass Road to Williams Road via the railroad tracks. We realize we have a lot of information on Cass Road because of the Boardman Dams project that's been underway for quite some time, but we don't have a lot of information on the other options. We've got a lot of unknowns, but we've been proceeding under the assumption that the Cass Road Bridge would need to be replaced, and so we have a lot of information about that. Keep in mind that any decision on the Cass Road Bridge does not preclude any of the other alternatives from being explored. But we have assembled a team tonight of individuals to provide you with all kinds of information. And I think that Jim Cook is going to speak for the Road Commission and speak toward transportation issues. We have Matt Skeels here from TC Talos to talk about the Hammond-Hartman issues. We have Kim Balke from the Conservation Resource Alliance who will address the sequencing of the dam removals and the funding issues and the planning and other aspects of the Cass Road Bridge. So we've prepared some information for you based on the questions that were asked at the previous meeting also. We're going to start by going right at those. I was going to ask Frank Deturi, who's the president or the chairman of the implementation team, to start us off by addressing the question of why we want to relocate the river. And this was found in the feasibility study done by the Army Corps of Engineers and URS. Why they want to relocate the river channel to its original location, which is about 500 feet west of its original location, or the location that it sits at now. And Frank is here. I'm going to turn the microphone over to him.
Sure. Good evening, folks. I'm Frank Deturi, work for the Natural Resource Department, the Grand Traverse Band Ottawa Chippewa Indians. I'm also speaking on behalf of the implementation team. I'm the chairman of the Boardman Dam Settlement Agreement implementation team. And what Dave would like me to explain or to talk about is just why place the river, or the ideology is to place the river back in its original location, which is approximately 400 to 500 feet west of the existing structure. And the reason why happens to be, there are several reasons, and what it really gets down to is that rivers wind up where they are in a valley because the constraints of the valley and the steepness of the valley. Depending on how wide that valley is and how steep the valley is, that dictates that flow, that pattern, that sinuous back and forth pattern of a river. And previous to dam construction, the original dam construction, the river flowed in a pattern through that valley that was approximately 400 to 500 feet west of the dam location. Now, one of the reasons we know that is that we have some wonderful old maps that show the location. There was actually an old, I know that you folks probably know that there was another dam in that same location, 400 to 500 feet to the west. Actually, another dam, more of an old powerhouse and dam in that location. The reason, another reason that we understand that the river flowed through there is because part of the funds that we appropriated for this entire project were for not only Brown Bridge Dam upstream, but to understand the phases downstream too. So we spent quite a bit of time and effort with fluvial geomorphologists, folks that study the river, mapping that corridor between Boardman and Sabin dams. Going back through there and sticking basically a chimney sweep rod down into the ground to find the lowest area through that entire valley, and that dictates where the river actually flowed. And what we found was that the river, that pattern of the river flowed, again, 400 to 500 feet west of the original structure. That's where it was, where it originally flowed before the dam was placed. So now that we know it's that's why it was there. That's where it actually was. So why do you want to put it back there? Because rivers seek a certain pattern depending on those parameters. There are three components that are really important. One is a maintenance issue. If you put a river back in its as close to its original condition as possible, then you alleviate the river's desire to look for another pattern. It's in the pattern that it wants to run in due to those parameters that we talked about. So because it's in the location it wants to be in, you're able to manage the sediment that is adjoining or alongside of that. So it creates a pattern and profile that allows you to control the sediment that is in that same area. So number one, there's a maintenance issue with the sediments. It's the most it is the most responsible option, because putting it back in that in that original location locks in the sediment that would be available for the river to travel. Number two, because you have the big bends in it, it puts the river back in velocities that will allow the creatures that used it then, or fish passage, aquatic organisms, to use it again. If you put water in a straight pipe, it moves a lot faster at a higher velocity and doesn't allow passage of certain species. So from the environmental aspect, we have a river that's back in its original pattern. It lets the aquatic organisms use that without being impeded by the velocities of a straightened channel. Also, by putting it back in that pattern and in that area of 400 to 500 feet to the west, it lets the river access floodplains that were there previous to dam creation. So not only do you have a river that's meandering back and forth, because it meanders back and forth, when you have high flow events, it has the ability to come out of that meander, out into the floodplain, and with that pattern to the west, there are already floodplains existing there that can be used as part of the project. And the third component of this is that by excavating, realigning the river to its original position, it's the least costly, it's the most cost effective. You spend the least amount of money because your other option would be hard engineering practices that require extensive excavation techniques with large amounts of concrete. So again, the three big components: the maintenance or safety issue, because you're putting the river back in a function that it wants to be in a place it wants to be, with environmental benefits that lets it function the way it should with a floodplain at a cost that is the most economical and efficient use of your funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Any
Do we
questions for Frank?
want, do we want to ask questions at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, John?
Yes, this isn't directly on why we're moving the river to the west a little bit, but there's been some question as to what studies have been done on the hydrology of the river when the dams are removed, some concern about flooding of the South Airport Road and the culverts there and so forth. What studies have been done hydrologically on the river, or what studies are being done or will be done in the future?
There was a hydrological analysis done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the feasibility study in 2009, I believe, was the first conclusion of that. That was at the feasibility study level. It was looked at again about a year and a half ago, again by, about 2 years ago, by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, also by the project team that is in charge of the Brown Bridge the Brown Bridge project. Part of that process included a review of that hydrological study. And again, recently, so I think the same hydrological study was done and repeated, reevaluated 3 times, originally by URS Army Corps of Engineers, and then again reviewed by them twice since then that I know of.
Yeah, if you let that go back to the original bed, it would seem to me you're right, you have less need for reconstructing the ground because just below the surface is the old gravel bed that was there 90 years ago. Am I right? Is that true? The gravel bed that used to be there is still under the ground there and still usable.
Yeah, as far as actual knowledge through data, between Sabin Dam and Boardman Dam, we've already done, the project partners have already concluded depth of refusal studies that show exactly where that
So that's an important component to get back to that bed, and it's easier to get to it there than anywhere else.
Sure, but not to mislead, there still needs to be data gathered on the, would be the south side or the upstream side of Boardman, because the original, that original data was done between Boardman and Sabin Dams, just so we can understand what the river was. So there needs to be more data gathered upstream, and in the area of the old dam location, which is about 400 or 500 feet to the west, there are a couple of areas in there that there was no data gathered because there's a pretty large pond, so that needs to be part of the next data analysis.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mark?
It's not really a question, Frank, it's more of a statement, is that, you know, I don't ever recall historically the Grand Traverse County Road Commission ever being against the removal of the dams, and I can assure you right now that we support the removal of the dams. We never have stood in the way, we don't want to, just so you know. We think this is a great benefit for the community.
Thanks, I'd like to hear that.
Other questions? I have one question. What is the drop going to be from when you take that dam out and go back to the original river? It's 45 feet where the dam is now? And will it be less where you're looking at going through? Or more?
In the HEC-RAS model, which is the model that actually is that hydrological analysis, it shows those percentages that come, it shows the slope of the river. Mm-hmm. It shows a river slope in that area at about 1.6%. So the rest of the river from, let's say, Keystone all the way up through Brown Bridge, that's at about 0.19, it's 7 feet per mile, 7 to 8 feet per mile. The area between Boardman and Sabin happens to be located at about the area that when the last version of the glaciers receded, that's where the delta kind of came into play. So you have a little higher slope in that area. So 1.5%. What's that times? That's about 12 feet per mile. So I think what you're referring to is the amount of head water was stored behind that dam. That water was stored behind the dam because it was held behind the dam. So the river slope is pretty much what it was, and what we've seen and explored by depth of refusal shows a river slope that is indicative of that original hydrological report.
At one time during our meetings, they talked about either putting in a rock so that it would cascade down through there, or a water park. Is that any of the discussions that's happening, Dave? I don't know if your IT team has ever looked at that. I know that was one of the discussions I think we had about that particular spot as to whether or not we could do that, whether it's feasible, whether it was even, financially feasible also.
I heard that when I first arrived. I haven't heard it since the URS report came out that said that we should go around the current drop through the dam and follow the natural course of the river.
There was a gentleman that brought in some pictures, I remember during one of our meetings, that showed what it would look like if you put some sort of a waterfall in that particular thing and how well it would look. And so I just didn't know if that was one of those things that the engineers would look at, or they're just going to open it up and go, like he said, it's the least expensive way of doing it too. But also, what are we looking at down in the future?
I think not only being the least effective, it also allows the river to function the way it wants to function. You can surely engineer anything you like to fit in that situation, in that particular part of the valley. But remember, as far as the function of the river, anything you engineer that isn't what was formed originally needs to be maintained, because Mother Nature still wants to have things flow the way she wants them to flow. So I haven't heard any particular talk about whitewater parks in that stretch recently.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
I'm referencing the photo that's in our packet here. Frank, I noticed that you know, there's an embankment would come out and the river would return back to its channel. It literally would go around where the current straight shot for the dam is. Once that all that's removed, I mean, is that going to be a dry bed? Is that just going to become parkland and just a valley there?
Which
well,
the area of the removal?
Yeah, where the current dam is, okay, when this channel, the new channel, or the channel, the earthen dam comes out and it's rerouted completely around, okay? 2 questions. What's going to happen to that? Is it going to be dry like it originally was? And 2, how is the release going to happen on an earthen dam? Because I know the bridge is going to be built in the dry, and then the earthen dam is going to be removed, and the water is going to proceed through underneath the bridge. So it's a twofold question. What's happening with this man-made river valley here? Because I know that's very steep banks and all. And number 2, how is it going to be staged out to have the earthen dam removed? Because my concern is this bridge is going to be there.
And the only way I can answer the question is to refer to the detailed project report that URS and the Army Corps of Engineers are currently exploring. So to answer the first part of your question, and this is, my recollection is that there would be some spoil area, basically a spoil area in some of the old straightened part, where there's a large drop. Physically, to build a road in there, some of that would have to be filled, because remember, in that area that we currently have a bridge, that would have to be filled to create a roadway through there. And I'm not the engineer responsible for that design, but as far as the phasing and the way they're thinking about, it's still in concept. I know they mentioned something about pumping waters around it, but it's still in concept, and I really don't feel comfortable
that's fine.
to answer that question.
But then the removal of the earthen dam, is that again going to be based on the scope of their project, and they're going to recommend, our engineers are going to recommend how that takes place?
And I think that as we move forward, we'll understand, again, we're in concept phase right now, and I wish I had more information for that particular area. Again, you're talking about the straightened channel area being used for fill, right? And that's what I recall, but that's really up to the engineers that are going to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Frank, I'm just trying to figure out the upstream from the Boardman Dam. I'm kind of picturing that we're going to have to track that back up to, say, the old Keystone Dam that washed out 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it was. You know, I'm assuming we're not going to do anything from the river above that point. Basically, we're going to work from that point down through what was the Boardman Pond, to determine what the line of the river will be.
So the next critical phase in this project is to gather the data that will allow us to understand that. So it's that same depth of
But
refusal.
that's kind of what I'm thinking, is about that distance upstream from Boardman River, is that about right? Or
I
Boardman
think
Dam?
the depth of refusal, we've talked about how far up to map, and I think the depth of refusal mapping will go basically from Beitner down to where it left off, which would be just below Boardman Dam now, in that little pond area that I talked about. So the data needs to be gathered from there all the way up, and once you gather that data and you understand where the river is, basically then you know where to start tailing it out, or where the natural river meets where the old river was. Does that answer your question, Sonny?
That's fine, thanks.
Larry?
Just a quick clarification, Dave, if you could. Given your presentation at the beginning, you had mentioned towards the end that the Road Commission had met last night. And we believe that you took up the issue of the $3 million or $3.2 million funds for the replacement of Cass Road, and you voted to accept that grant and move forward with that bridge. And is that what happened last night, or?
No, we didn't have a formal motion.
You did? So you did not take action?
Right.
Okay.
We will.
Oh, okay, all right. I just want to know if you've taken action already on that or not.
We will.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks.
So, any other questions? Yeah, I've got one other question. How much simpler would this project be if we didn't build a bridge?
Say again, please?
How much simpler would this project be if we didn't build a bridge?
If there was no bridge at the Cass Road location?
Are you asking if it would be simpler to use Commissioner Thomas's plan?
I'm
Or
not
just
asking that at all.
Or just, I just wanted
Right,
clarification.
I'm just
Thank you.
asking, how much simpler would this project be
Cass Road.
without having to deal
Okay.
with the bridge? And I don't know if you can answer that. I don't want to put you on it.
Sure. It's, build a bridge or not a bridge, it would be much simpler without a bridge in place. There are environmental benefits for having a bridge not in place, because you could have whatever span you wanted in that place. You'd have two cul-de-sacs at each end of it with no crossing. That's a lot simpler than building the bridge. But I don't know if that's for you folks to decide. It would be simpler without a bridge.
A little different subject. We're already delinquent on getting this dam out. What does that mean going forward?
Well, it probably means that the DEQ will look at our efforts to get that dam out and say if we're delayed or stalled in any way. There's just a matter of time. I mean, when I read the 1999 environmental assessment on various options for east-west corridors and so forth, they said that it would be likely that the Cass Road Bridge would be non-functional and no longer usable by 2010. And I think what we've received from the DEQ is 2012 is when we want it out of there. And we're just living on borrowed time right now. They're going to close that bridge if we don't show forward progress. I'm pretty convinced of that.
That's the only consequence, or there loss of grants or other issues that could
Well,
arise?
the grant that's in question right now would be lost, and there wouldn't be a crossing there, and we would have to go on 8th Street or Airport Road. And pretty much the third crossing would be gone.
And I think some of the other folks you mentioned will have some comments regarding that. I think
Sure.
I think the other thing is that if we do nothing and the DEQ comes in and says, we're going to take the bridge out, do they bill us?
I don't know the answer to that question.
You know, because, if we did nothing and they come in and did it and we don't have any financial liability on that, let them do it. And then we'll take and do the bridge.
Yeah.
We have liability for it.
Yeah.
Off that a little bit, what if we don't take the dam out and put the river back to its historic channel? Do we have to take the dam out?
Yeah.
as far as the
Consent agreement says the dam has to come out.
Right.
If there's no head behind it, why?
What?
There's no water behind it.
There's
Why do you
40
get-
feet behind it.
Not if you redo the channel and put the river to its historic spot, there will be no head behind that dam. That's
Yeah.
how they built it.
So,
Yeah.
So your question is, if we put the river back where it was, can the dam stay in place?
I'm just wondering. That'd be cheaper.
But I don't think the citizens of our county want to be liable for having that powerhouse and having to take that out.
Yeah, and my understanding is the Board of Commissioners in the city opted to remove the dams, not to do a bunch of other things.
Right.
These are other parts of the project, but the directive was to remove the dams.
So, okay. Any other questions? Frank, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Back to you, Dave.
yes, and I have, there's some questions that came up regarding funding that commissioners and road commissioners wanted answered, and some sequencing questions about why are we taking out the Boardman Dam first, the Sabin Dam second, when a while back it was going to be Sabin first and then the Boardman. And I want to call Kim Balke up here from Conservation Resource Alliance, because Kim probably knows more about this than anyone.
Well, Boardman Dam is structurally in worse condition than Sabin Dam. Boardman Dam has more cracking and spalling in the concrete and beams.
Kim, you want to
Yeah.
introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Kim Balke with the Conservation Resource Alliance. The CRA is a consultant to the implementation team. We're also a nonprofit in Traverse City, and we do river restoration projects throughout a 13-county region in Northwest Michigan. Typically on rivers, too, we like to start in the upstream areas and work our way downstream. By doing Boardman before Sabin, the Sabin impoundment will serve as a catch basin for all the construction activities we do related to Boardman Dam removal, putting the stream back into its historic location, and building Cass Road Bridge. So that will be nice to have. I was just at a site tour this morning where we did a bridge project last year, and then we went downstream and looked at the next one that we have to do. Again, starting upstream and working down, because everything we do up here affects what's going on down there. Another very important factor is that Sabin Dam serves as a lamprey barrier. In 2011, the Fish and Wildlife Service found sea lamprey between Union Street Dam, which currently also serves as a lamprey barrier. They found sea lamprey between Union Street and Sabin. Now, last summer, they replaced a bunch of boards at Union Street. Last year, they did not, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, they did not find sea lamprey in the stretch of river between those two dams. The Fish and Wildlife Service likes to see, as I understand, 3 years of finding no sea lamprey before they can support removal of a barrier. So that's a pretty big issue. Sea lamprey is a problem for, our Great Lakes, and they get up into our rivers and they reproduce and become an even bigger problem. And, I think those are the most important reasons why we would do Boardman before Sabin. Now, with that, during the engineering phase, the surveying phase, we look at both dams collectively. When it comes to construction, our dollars should be prioritized to Boardman and then Sabin. But again, during the engineering and surveying phase, you look at them together because they're so close together and they affect one another, basically. So as far as funding goes, the IT members and ex officio members, collectively, we have about $1 million. The county has a $250,000 grant from the Fry Foundation. Our organization has a $357,000 grant from the Dam Management Program with the DNR. And the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians was recently awarded a grant. I'm not sure the exact dollar amount, but it's, I think, over $300,000 from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Our organization continues to, as well as others, write grant proposals to apply for more funding. We've applied for another, I think, almost $2 million from a couple of other federal sources this last year. And we continue to write into these scopes of work the entire scope of Boardman, Sabin, and ideally Cass Road Bridge together. And as the Brown Bridge Dam grants are closed out this year, there's other funders involved in that project that we will go back to as we close out their grants and ask them to support this project again in the next phase. I mean, just to keep in mind, Brown Bridge Dam removal cost over $4 million, and there were over 40 sources of funding, everything from $5,000 to $1 million, and it all adds up, and that's how we get to our end goal. So with that dollar amount in mind, according to the Army Corps' report, it's going to potentially cost $8 million to remove Boardman Dam and reconstruct Cass Road Bridge. Sabin Dam would potentially be another $2.6 million. And these estimates don't include removal of the powerhouses. So those are some pretty healthy numbers, but I think they're doable, and the implementation team is committed to helping the owners to raise those funds to continue the project. So in terms of timeline, there's a working group of the implementation team that's updating the qualifications-based selection process for the engineering firm for the next phase. We're in those final stages of developing a recommendation to the implementation team, hoping to have our engineering firm selected in this next month. Once the IT selects that engineering firm, we then get together and we develop a scope of work, and the engineering firm gives us costs for that scope of work. Now, granted, we have some estimates from the Army Corps' conceptual study, and we've been using those estimates as we fundraise, but really developing that contract, is where you really fine-tune those dollar amounts. And that's why it's helpful to know whether or not to include Cass Road Bridge in this, because I think, this year, ideally, we could do survey work of the whole project area, starting from upstream of the Boardman impoundment all the way down below Sabin. So survey work, and then geotechnical investigation, soil borings for removing these dams, for putting the river back in its historic channel, and building a new bridge there. I imagine soil borings will be a little more comprehensive if we're going to go build a new bridge too. And collecting that important data, that information will allow us to start, truly engineering for these sites. And so at that time, this summer, hopefully, as that scope of work is presented from the engineering firm, their dollar amounts are presented, then we look at the dollar amounts that we have and determine how much work we can afford and we can do in 2013 and 2014 and so on, all the while continuing to fundraise. So that's an important part of the timeline. Another important part of the timeline that's ongoing is that the Army Corps is working on approving their detailed project report and their environmental assessment. These two documents are pretty important. They help to meet the requirements of NEPA. I don't know how many of you folks are familiar with that acronym. It's the National Environmental Policy Act. The act basically says that any project involving the environment and federal entities, whether it's the federal entities that are actually doing the work or funding the work, they have to do a comprehensive study and assessment of what they want to do and define the impacts to both the natural environment and the human environment. I mean, at our organization, we have to do NEPA for $5,000 sites all the way to $1 million projects. And with the Army Corps doing that task for this project, it's wonderful, because the Army Corps likely has pretty high expectations and standards for those types of documents, and for NEPA to be completed by them will hopefully help us meet expectations and requirements by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, by MDOT, and all these other federal agencies that are coming into play in these projects. So that is a benefit that is very valuable. So again, everything is dependent on funding, but if our funding picture, is sufficient, ideally we could be doing the survey work, the geotechnical work this year, doing engineering and permitting work next year, and then again, dependent on funding, construction for 2015. And so I think that's pretty much all I
Could you
have.
talk a little bit about the bridge itself and the funding, how that's structured? And
Yeah. So the MDOT has allocated up to $3,088,000 out of their local bridge fund to the road commission. With the local bridge funds, they fund 95% of construction. So it's kind of interesting how they configure that. So actually, you know, whatever the construction costs come through for Cass Road Bridge, they'll fund 95% of that. So we have to keep in our minds that there's going to be a 5% local match, and that'll probably be around $150,000. MDOT requires that the bridge owner does the engineering and all the paperwork and presents it to them. So again, those engineering costs will have to be paid by someone other than MDOT. And you know, the geotechnical work, the survey work, everything that'll have to be paid by another funding source. Yeah. But again, you know, I've been in my job for a while now, and I'm very much used to coalescing all the aspects involved in one site. You know, these bridges, these dams, they're usually magnets for other uses as well. And the most cost-efficient way to do things is to do it all together and to propose that to your funders as well, you know. I don't know, so the partnership method has worked for us, and I think it makes sense to look at this problem that we have in our community and in our watershed and take care of all of it at the same time. It makes the most sense to me, so.
Two things. You were talking about the $150,000 that someone else has come up with. Is there a good chance, as you see it, we'll find grant-type money, or is that something we'll have to take out of our own budget as a county?
Well, with this project, because it's a multi-year project and it's multifaceted in so many ways, I don't have a good answer to that yet. You know, I guess I would rather look at the first phase, which is that design, engineering, and survey phase, and figure out how to fill the gaps for that funding picture first. Now with that, again, all the proposal writing that we're doing, that a lot of our partners are doing, is for everything, you know, to ask our funders to make everything applicable. So I don't have a good answer for that. Maybe next year I would.
My second part of the question is, someone's going to be designing a bridge and essentially giving it to our road commission. And so what type of input do they get to have on how the bridge is built and those type of deal? It's going to be their bridge.
Yes. The road commission is on the implementation team. They're an ex officio member.
So they'll have some say?
Oh yeah, they have say right now as we're selecting that engineering firm. Jim Johnson is on the working group, and when we had that updated request of qualifications, we put everything bridge related, you know, in that list of qualifications. Tell us, you know, engineering firms, how qualified you are.
There'll be some melding of the minds. It won't just be, here's your bridge.
Yes.
Okay.
And in front of it.
Sonny?
Well, I guess a couple things. One, you know, I had opportunity to be down below where that picture that's up there, it was 10 years ago, and the concrete wasn't good then. I can't believe it's any better now. I also was there the day the sinkhole occurred above the concrete and the asphalt fell in, and we took truckloads of pea stone and drainfield stone and dumped it in and put asphalt over the top because it had fell through. Yeah, the Boardman Dam is a significant structural problem. My other question, and Kim, you probably will know the answer. We've always talked about these removals based on the Army Corps' estimates of cost of removal. How close was Brown Bridge to the estimated cost?
It was pretty close. Yeah.
Okay. When we talked about this thing and we talked about moving forward in partnership with the city to take out Brown Bridge back 2 years ago, probably now, 2.5 years ago, we started that process.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of the things. Let's move forward with this bridge. We'll be able to see how realistic our estimates are, and we'll be able to show the people what we're going to have when we're done. When the dam actually is removed and the powerhouse is removed, this is what you're going to have. And I think we're getting to that point now to where we can actually see what's happened with Brown Bridge removed, what the river's done, what the area around the river's done. You know, we look down at Boardman Pond, we've seen what the drawdown has done, and now that we're getting some revegetation of those areas. And, you know, I think the real important piece was to see how realistic our cost dollars were.
Yeah.
And the numbers have proved to be very good. So that makes me feel a lot better. I've seen, over the years sitting in these chairs, I've seen a lot of projects that were estimated to cost you $1 million, and when you were all over with, they cost you $1.6 million, you know, or more. You know, so it's nice to know that the number that we were given for the removal of Brown Bridge was a realistic number of what it actually cost.
Yeah.
Larry?
Just to piggyback on Sonny's point, I would want to make sure we have the right story from MDOT, that if those funds are not used for that project, then those funds will will lapse and go to another project. And it wouldn't be ours, it'd be somebody else on their list or whatever. And then there's no ins and outs or no subject tos or no other contingencies, so we have a clear understanding that if we don't move forward with the Cass Road replacement, that funding is gone. Is that correct?
That's been my understanding, and we did meet with MDOT in January of this year. Several of us did, myself, the Army Corps, the Road Commission, URS, Conservation District. We met with the two lead people of the local bridge program. The local bridge program is designed to fund failing existing infrastructure. And as many of us know in Michigan, there are a plethora of road and bridge needs in this state. And so typically with local bridge funds, if a county turns away a grant, then it goes to a next needed bridge in another municipality.
All right. I guess the second question is that they've earmarked that amount of money for the replacement of the bridge. And let's say you go through all the engineering studies and then you go the engineering specs, and then I imagine you just go out for bid, or you spec it out and then you go out for bid, you do the drawings or whatever. And then if the cost comes in substantially more, then it's come back decision time again, you know, because if we don't have the additional money, or if MDOT doesn't want to kick in any more money into the project, then we're back to another decision, whether we should accept the grant or just let it go.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, but I think in my experience with road commissions and the bridge program is that usually the surprise, if there is one, for the bridge cost comes after you do soil borings and survey. You know, if you find some crazy unstable soils down there. I feel good about the selection process we're going through for this, you know, next engineering firm. We've got some great firms to choose from, and they're qualified and well experienced. If there are any surprises to be found with the bridge, I would think they would be found early on after soil exploration.
Right.
So,
Right,
not after design.
Mark?
I don't think so.
Kim, I appreciate you coming tonight and breaking this down for us, but I don't mean to say but what I would ask is that can you put this in writing for us? I mean, I'd like to see both bodies get the breakdown of the grants for the bridge removal and the restoration as one group of grants and the sources and the amount. And then I'd like to see over here the bridge grant, the monies that are being applied to build the new bridge. I'd like to see, I know you said $8 million estimate, but I'd like to know hard dollars where these funds are coming for each project. If I could, I think everybody would like to see that information. And the other thing that I heard tonight was the Army Corps of Engineers is doing a lot of the prep work, getting us up to a certain point. And at one point, which sounds like they're real close, they're going to do a handoff And that handoff then is going to be the IT team that's going to select an engineering firm. Okay? And that engineering firm is going to then take care of the whole project in a bundle. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but the road commission isn't necessarily interested in somebody choosing our engineer. And so,
Wait, say that last part again?
The idea is that the IT team is going to select an engineering firm for this project. This project being both the dam removal, river restoration, and also the bridge, the building of the bridge. Correct?
Yep. Yes.
Carl?
Well, I want to follow up a little bit on Dr. Lathrop's comments, too. The Road Commission is a non-voting member here. We do have some say, but we really don't have a vote. So it could boil down to you're going to get what you're going to get. I mean, that's a possibility. I'm not going to say that it's going to fall on deaf ears, but it certainly could. Our input could mean nothing, or it could mean a lot. Following up on Mark's, we're the organization that's going to take care of and maintain this bridge, and I think us with the ability to guide this engineer and through our engineering staff, I think is critical. I think if we bundle this all in a project, I don't necessarily know that's the best interest of the public. We did pass a resolution in favor of this bridge. We secured a $3.1 million grant for that. We also have stated on numerous occasions that that's the Road Commission's participation in this project, $3.1 million. We have no more money to put into this project. And I just heard $150,000 for engineering. It's going to have to come from somewhere. Somebody says from the county, the Road Commission. We don't have the money. So that funding source, our participation in this project is this grant. That's it. That's the money we got. And we're willing to do that. But cost overruns in that are certainly going to have to be addressed. Sonny's question on how Brown Bridge went dollar-wise, very good question. This one could go the same, it could go south, you don't know. But our participation is $3.1 million. That's the bottom line. That's it.
Bill?
Something we seem to keep losing sight of, or I guess what the Road Commission has got its sights on, is that this is not one big project. This is two separate projects with two separate levels of liability and responsibility. The one is the bridge, the river restoration, the dam removal. Of that project, the Road Commission really isn't a part of, other than as individual citizens as we're watching it progress. However, the road and the bridge that's going to be put there is specifically our responsibility, and we're the only organization of the county who has the authorization to actually build a bridge anywhere, especially there. So it seems to be melded into one big project where we're all sitting around this communal pot trying to decide what to do, when in fact it is, I came up and worked in private industry and construction. This is more like where you have a construction management team and two prime contractors. We're one of those prime contractors. And I think when we structure this, we need to make sure that it is addressed and structured in that way. Otherwise, we're just looking for, legal and all sorts of difficulties, down the road.
I think it's important to note that Grand Traverse County owns the dam. Grand Traverse County Road Commission is responsible and owns the bridge.
Right.
And so there's a different, and this is a perfect storm. Both of these are coming together. And we do have to look at it together somehow, some way, because we can't leave Grand Traverse County taxpayers on the hook for something down the road that we may not be able to take care of. We need to take care of it today, particularly the powerhouse and what's going to happen there, and whether or not you're going to fill in, how you're going to fill where the current river is going, and what kind of a road you're going to build there, how that's going to be taken care of. All that comes into play for this whole process. And then, Sabin Dam also, like she said, has to be part of this thing because that's where the funders like it. The funders don't fund just one project at a time. They want to see the whole picture and be able to figure out what you're going to do and where you're going to go with that. Larry?
Now that I understand their position on this thing, I guess I'm sort of in agreement that they need at least a seat at the table or some ability to discuss the engineering of the bridge and the acceptance of the engineering and the firm and the cost and how they're going to go about doing it. I mean, it seems to me that there should be some way that the implementation team should have some an ability to accommodate the road commission on when we set around that discussion and the selection and pros and cons of firms and everything else, that they would have their input and be weighted. So
Absolutely.
Can that be accomplished?
Oh, absolutely. And I think because there's so many facets to this site, I think there are different scenarios of who contracts with who to do which task. So, there's options there.
Right.
And obviously, we do have two separate owners. And
if the team can get together with the road commission and come up with an agreement on that, that would be great.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Dan?
That's exactly what I'm wondering. Do you conceive that it can be done, and we can make these guys happy?
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
Well,
And so what do we do?
certainly hope so.
At the very end, do we just give it, do they buy it for $1? I mean, how do they get possession of it?
They own it from the beginning.
Pardon?
They own it from the beginning.
Well,
Yeah, the grant is ours. I mean, the grant is the road commission's grant. It's not a part of this communal pot.
Dr. Dan, the reason we're meeting is because we're setting on $3.1 million and it's going to make this project not move if we don't do something. That's why we're here tonight, we wanted to get a lot of answers to a lot of questions. We've been asking questions for 2.5 years. And so we're getting those answers now. Thank you very much. We are, all of us. And, the county commission has a stake in this project. We have a stake in it. Now we're determining exactly what each party's responsibilities are. But what's interesting is that here's the county, here's the road commission, here's third party talking for both of us. That's not a problem, but that's what's happened by the nature of the arrangement. We don't object to that. We just want answers, and we want to know that our responsibilities are going to be met properly. And I think you wouldn't expect anything less from us, and certainly we wouldn't expect anything less from you.
looks like it can be done, though, and it's very exciting to see this happen. I'm pumped about it, so.
Jim?
Good evening. Maybe I can help out a little bit. I was down in the basement going through files all afternoon, and I was looking for an agreement because I was sure there's got to be an agreement between the county and the road commission because it seems like there should be some legal agreement which would address a lot of the liability issues and a lot of those concerns on who makes decisions on whose behalf and et cetera. So I didn't have any luck finding any agreements. For about an hour before I came to this meeting, I was on the phone with our attorney, and we are in the process of putting an agreement together, a draft agreement, so we can work with the county and the road commission and kind of set some,
In the IT.
in the IT.
Yeah.
And so I think that will help a lot. That will help in regard to, again, concerns on liability, insurances, who provides what. As I looked at it today, we have this probably 20-foot wide strip of asphalt that goes across a bridge. But what we really need is about a 66-foot right-of-way, which we do not have. And so as part of that agreement, we will continue that. What we'll probably do is we'll finalize an alignment and a right-of-way when the project is done or at least designed. So there's just a lot of issues that we haven't dealt with. And really, and I'm the new person here, but what I've seen is, for 2 years or 2.5 years, this project has been talked about. And And it's like a lot of projects, you know, everybody knows it's coming, but it's not really real until it slaps you in the face. And we're really at that point. You know, last December, the dam should have been taken out. We know that we're all living on borrowed time, and so now it's slapping us in the face. We have to do something. And frankly, our board has not been, maybe not been in the loop as far as all the details. And again, Jim Johnson and I, over the last 6 months or so, have really gotten involved and learned a lot. And so I think it's just a matter of working through the details, having an agreement, making sure everybody's comfortable, and then lastly, I think the reason we were here a week ago and why we've had special meetings is, you know, now's the time we have to decide, are we replacing the Cass Road Bridge or not? And so I think it's been a good time for everybody to step back and one last look at it and say, is this the best solution? Do we really want to do this? And so I think we're really at that point now where I think as a road commission, I think we're ready to move forward with an agreement and making those things happen.
Right. Okay, good.
Sonny?
Interesting you'd talk about 66 feet. Because as I've sat in this chair for 16 years, I've heard all different kinds of discussion about the Cass Road Bridge and the Hartman-Hammond Bridge and all the different kinds of things and the pros and cons. And then last week we sat here and we talked about, well, maybe we should have 2 bridges. Well, why aren't we building a 4-lane bridge across the river right where the Cass Road Bridge is going to go and be done with it? We've already got the environmental impact studies for that location. We have some of the money toward the construction of that bridge. You know, why aren't we building a bridge big enough to handle all of the traffic that we need to run across there?
Money.
Well,
Money.
But it's still going to be cheaper than building 2 bridges, folks.
Well, can I jump in? The Army Corps' if I'm understanding right, the Army Corps' environmental impact report recommends putting the river back in the original channel. And then that would not be a bridge anymore, it would just simply be fill.
Oh, I understand where the dam is coming out, it's not going to be filled, but we're talking about building a bridge across the new channel.
Yeah.
And let's make sure that when we build the bridge across the new channel, it facilitates enough traffic that we don't have to talk about having another bridge here in another 5 years.
Oh.
You know, let's make the bridge big enough that we meet our needs.
Meet traffic needs, yes.
You don't have the money to do that.
I don't know the answer to this, but maybe you do, Herb. Is there, on this IT team, are there any county commissioner board people on that team?
No. Dave is our representative.
Okay.
Richard?
Well, I guess my biggest problem with this bridge across where the dam is now is that for the amount it's going to cost, it's not going to alleviate our traffic problems.
Right.
Our problem is not north-south traffic, it's east-west traffic, and that's not going to help that a bit. And whether they build it or not, I think it's too much money for what you're going to be getting out of it. Right now, Keystone Road every night is full of traffic. All you're doing with this bridge is adding to that traffic. And hey, we've got bigger problems than a bridge across there. Whether you go down the railroad track or do what Garfield Township would like to do and go east-west is the answer. And I just think this is a big bunch of money that we don't need to be spending on a bridge for that area. I just don't see it's going to help.
Larry?
Well, here's my opinion on that, Dick, is that if you move forward and you don't accept the grant and you don't build the bridge and you take out the dam, then you've given less opportunity for people to go to the east-west that are using it right now. So you're creating more of a congested problem in the long run by not replacing that road.
No.
Secondary, you could make the argument that you don't need that road if you had the funding and you were ready to go on the Hartman-Hammond or another alternative, which you do not. So if you take that bridge out and you don't put something back and you can't find the money to put another bridge up, you've worsened your situation, in my opinion.
We don't have They don't have the money to put stripes on the road.
They have money for that bridge.
No, they don't.
You're gonna get yourself in a worse situation if you don't put that bridge or that road back.
I don't agree.
Without funding for another source. Charlie?
I kind of agree with Mr. Thomas on this one. I think if you improve that bridge, you're going to put more traffic on Keystone. And certain times of day, it's a nightmare down there. 4 lanes especially would add a lot more traffic to Keystone. And a 4-lane bridge there would not smooth traffic flow east to west like the big connector would. There's still a lot of jogging around and getting on Keystone back up to Hamlin and all that thing. So I don't think the 4-lane is really necessarily that great an idea.
Dan? I hate to disagree with someone I like so much. But I think that a bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. That bridge exists now, and it serves a big function to the community. I think these 2 issues are separate, and they should stand on their own 2 feet. Cass Bridge can do it, and if we go to Hartman-Hanneman or some other thing, we should evaluate on its own 2 feet. I don't think we should connect these 2 things. That's my point.
I was really hoping we wouldn't get to item D on here, but now we've arrived. I've had numerous, maybe 100 or more people talk to me in the last 6 months about this issue, and it's been pretty every direction. But it's honing down to this. I was and still hesitant on the Cass Road Bridge. Here's the facts. Cass Road Bridge is not going to solve our regional transportation problem. We can build bridges, we can build roads, it just displaces the traffic, okay? Our issues at the Road Commission, we have to look at it from a regional perspective because of the fact that we're Grand Traverse County and we're a heavily regional populated area. So the Cass Road Bridge fits perfectly into a local road bridge. 2-lane road, connecting on both sides. The only disadvantage is it actually on the east side comes out on a T at a light. That's a big disadvantage. I wish it went through. With all that said, if we don't put in a bridge there, we're going to have a significant local negative impact, period.
That's my point.
But we have the money. I think we should move forward with this project, okay? But that doesn't preclude that we need to get serious about our next stage, okay? And we need a true regional crossing. And we need to be looking at it. This is going to affect people from all the way down south, all the way up to the UP, to the bridge. It's the truth. And we got to get real. We are a bottleneck, and we got to take care of that. We got to take care of our city. The city of Traverse City has a problem. We can address that with a regional transportation program. We studied it. We took transportation dollars and we did it. It didn't tell us not to build a bridge. It didn't tell us not to connect corridors. What it told us was Cass Road Bridge is not a primary issue, but it should be replaced because of the local need. And it said that we will eventually have to address the regional issue. Well, now it's come to bear. So we do need to work on the Cass Road Bridge now as a community to support us and make it a 2-lane bridge, make it the best bridge we possibly can build. That's why we want to pick the engineer. That's what we are. We're road people. And at this point, we want to be able to help the county move forward with the dam removals. And then we're going to come back to the table, and we're going to have MDOT in tow, and we're going to talk realistically about a long-term regional growth plan for us, managed growth. I don't want a 28th Street like, down in Grand Rapids. But we literally have to have a regional connector. We got to take 2 of the closest connectors and marry them. And we have to reroute 37 and 31 out of the city of Traverse City and do that with MDOT's blessing and with their funding and our support. So we're going to have to come up front, and that's the truth. And, people want to battle the truth, but it's the truth. So you can either battle it or you get engaged to make it the best possible corridor connector there is that's for our community. You have a choice to make. So that's where we're at. So that's why I can support the Cass Road Bridge for the purpose and intention what it is. And yeah, because God blessed us with a river, it runs right through the middle of our town, I guess we're going to have more bridges. But let's do it right.
Dave, let's go back on schedule here.
Yeah, Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about transportation issues, or you want to talk about how many cars are going over that Cass Road Bridge? How many?
Yeah, I had several discussion points. We sort of jumped all over them, so
Yeah.
I'll jump around and try to fill in the gaps. But basically, what we know today is, we just did a traffic count on the Cass Road Bridge last month. We had 57. We averaged 57 24 cars a day over a period of several days. So, and then I went back and I looked at historically all the way back to 1998, and that traffic seems to increase about 200 cars a year, 200 cars per day per year. So, so there's a steady increase. I know there was some talk about a 4-lane. And while I was in the basement today, I got to look at a lot of different, a lot of options that were considered and either chosen or kind of put to the wayside. That was one of them that was kind of thrown off to the side, was the 4-lane bridge. For some of the reasons that were stated, it's just, you can make it a 4-lane road, but it's a curvy road, it's a local road, and it just, and if you look at the traffic modeling that Talus just received, it doesn't make a difference as far as it doesn't make a significant difference in traffic at all. So we know that almost 6,000 cars a day use the Cass Road Bridge, and that's a 1-lane bridge that's stopping with a light. How many seconds or minutes in between the light? So it's going to be a definite improvement. We're going to have a 2-lane bridge, and traffic is going to flow. And again, just like Commissioner McKellar had stated, it really serves. And if you look at the traffic, if you look at the modeling, if you look at back in history of all the studies that have been done, it serves a local transportation need, and that is it. It doesn't, and it won't solve any regional east-west corridor issues. It just won't. It just doesn't have the capacity. So that's what we know about the Cass Road Bridge. Also, when we replace that bridge, there won't be any weight restrictions. Currently, there are weight restrictions on that bridge. Bridges are rated, a perfect bridge is rated at 100. The Cass Road Bridge is rated at a 4. We're lucky it's open. It can be closed any time because it is in poor condition. So to me, and I think as a road commission, we're so far down that path. I think it really is time to stop asking, is it the right decision or not? It's almost a no-brainer. We have the money in hand. It's going to create some local jobs. It's going to improve a local transportation need. And there really, at this point, I don't think there's any downside to replacing that crossing. So as far as other options, I jotted down some notes because the county commissioner said, give us some pros and cons and talk about some of the other options. So Mr. Benda and I, we sat down and we talked about different options, and one of the first things you learn in engineering econ is there's always the do nothing option. The do nothing option is usually pretty cheap. But the reality, it doesn't solve any problems. And it's not free either. I mean, we would have to acquire right of way, we'd have to construct cul-de-sacs. And again, it's going to displace traffic. It's going to put 5,700 cars per day somewhere else. And it's probably going to be on South Airport Road, which, again, we're at 44,000 cars a day on South Airport Road. We're over 20% capacity. That's an area that we really have to, resolve a problem. The other thing is from a road commission perspective, you know, when it comes to safety and accommodating the public and the first responders is, you know, we don't ever want to lose a crossing, you know, and that's another reason we'd want to support the Cass Road Bridge. You know, everybody knows there's culverts under South Airport Road, and I don't think they're going to wash out tomorrow, and I don't think they're going to corrode and fall apart tomorrow. But the reality is they're culverts, and sometimes, you know, Mother Nature does funny things, and so we either wash out culverts, or we flood the road, or the road falls apart. And so we can't, as a road commission, we can't, as a community, lose a crossing. Because now we're stuck on 8th Street, you know, the Parkway or Chum's Corner.
Right.
And so, you know, so it's very critical, really, that we replace that crossing, and it sounds like it's going to be a bridge. So the other thing is we did have a work session yesterday, and as we talked, there was some discussion a couple weeks ago about passing a new resolution, and the new resolution was really the same resolution that our board passed in 2011. And in 2011, they chose to support the Cass Road Bridge project. They chose to go out and go out and seek a grant for that project. So the only thing that we did this time is we thought we maybe needed some language in there supporting the funding or a grant for design of the project. But yesterday, we kind of stepped back and said, well, geez, do we even need that? You know, our road commission has supported the bridge, and I think it's really pretty much a done deal. I mean, we just need to give CRA a copy of that resolution, and we need to make sure they understand that we are moving forward with the bridge, and we just need to get to work.
Decide where the bridge is going to go.
I think we know where the bridge is, the Cass Road Bridge is going to go. Again, so do nothing is an option, and again, there's a lot of cons, not a lot of pros. There is the Williams, Cass to Williams Road. We did take a look at that. Again, we're assuming that if we didn't replace the Cass Road crossing, we would just displace 5,700 cars onto that railroad right away and on down to Williams Road and onto Beitner. Anybody that's ever tried to turn out onto Beitner from Williams Road, it's pretty easy going right. It's not very easy going left. So, you know, now you're into, do we put a traffic signal there? It just doesn't, it really doesn't solve too many of our problems. Again, it's probably a more expensive project than people realize. Dealing with the railroad right away, that's usually time consuming. You know, if you were lucky, you might be able to get something done in a year. It's probably longer than that. But from a cost perspective, we went out and we looked at it. That railroad right away, the road bed is about 9 or 10 feet higher than Cass Road, where it turns and goes to the bridge. And so, you know, from a design perspective, we would actually have to take the approach back probably to Broad Road. So we'd be going north or northwest, whatever direction that is. But it's so there's a lot associated with, you know, trying to construct a brand new road on top of a railroad right away. It's over a mile and a half, and so I didn't get to talk to Jim this afternoon, but you know, my guess is you're looking at $1 million to $1.5 million just for the roadway, not counting all the other special things that you would have to do. So it's not a cheap solution, and again, I'm not even sure it's a worthwhile solution. Not to insult you, Dick. I thought it was a great idea. It just doesn't pan out from a financial perspective. And then lastly, you know, we've talked quite a bit around the idea that, you know, as Dr. Lathrop said, you know, it's two separate issues. You know, we're talking about a local traffic need, a local road, and that's something that we should do and we can do. And then there's then we have a responsibility to solve a traffic issue that we have out on South Airport Road, which also occurs on Division. And so that's one of the things I had said earlier in a meeting today. It's not an us, it's not a you-us problem. It's not a road commission problem. It's a community problem. We have a problem, which is a good thing. It's good for our economy that we have all the traffic, we have all the visitors, and we have all the people that live here. It's a great place to live. But the reality is we have a problem that we have to resolve, and that means that we have to look at an east-west corridor solution. So, again, like Dave said, we don't have a lot of information on that. I went through and did some pros and cons, and there's a lot of pros to looking at another east-west. There are some cons, and there are a lot of unknowns. If we had the funding and everything, if the world was perfect today, I think you're looking at 3 to 5 years before we could even, start construction on a new east-west corridor, crossing. The way that the world is today, it's probably more like 5 to 10 years out. So, but again, I think Commissioner McKellar made a good point, and I think Commissioner Limcool made the point maybe earlier today. We really need to, because these projects take so long to fund and to get through the approval process, it's not a project that we want to take on in 2035. It's a project that we need to deal with today, because it's going to take a long time. And so we can replace the Cass Road Bridge, and we can look at other improvements that we can do to our road system while all those things are going to come into alignment. So hopefully that answers some questions.
For Kim, back to Kim, okay. Question came up yesterday morning, was that on our bridge funding, okay, and the grant, devil's in the details here, we know that it's going to pay for the span.
Yep.
And the pedestals and everything to go with it. Mm-hmm. Our question is the approach on each side, because Cass Road is going to, on each side is going to have to be rerouted. So there's going to have to be new road built, compacted, filled, and the approaches up, asphalted, everything. Who's paying for that? Is that part of the 3.1 million grant? Is that allowable? Or are they strictly talking those funds are only for the actual bridge from end of span to end of span?
Well, typically, I think the bridge funds are from touchdown point to touchdown point. Is that right, Jim?
Normally.
Not to say there isn't any flexibility there, because we have such a unique scenario. We did talk with the MDOT fellows in January about some other items that may need help financially, and I don't think there was a firm yes or no on some of the fill issues that we're going to have and so forth. But, keeping in mind that restoring the river back to that historic channel is going to involve a lot of earthwork that will be applicable to our other grants as well. And so piggybacking the bridge construction onto that, I think there will be a lot of sharing of costs with some of our other more flexible funds. So I don't have a firm answer, yes or no, but I think there are options out there, and we would explore those as we go.
I've got the cover page here from the Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
And they said the following conditions will apply to these projects, specifically this one. And item 1 is the 95%. Item 2 is the funds are to be used for eligible bridge and approach construction costs only. Mm-hmm. I guess I define eligible, but 3 is state and federal participation in approach construction is limited to work within limits defined by touchdown points.
Yep, touchdown.
To the existing approach grade. And I believe that's because in almost every instance other than this is there's a bridge there that's old and it's removed, and a new bridge is put directly on that same footprint.
Yeah.
So what we're dealing with is kind of a unique position. Then it goes further, says exact limits will be determined on a project-by-project basis. So I think that's where the question mark comes in, where the gray area is created. as far as project by project basis. So it's defined, but it's not well defined. And then item 4 was costs for preliminary engineering, construction engineering, and right-of-way acquisition are not eligible for federal or state aid under the local bridge program. So the answer is yes and no, I guess.
Yep, yes and no,
So
as we
Kim,
go. Yes and no
Or
as we
maybe.
go.
Yes and no or maybe.
Well, going forward, the road commission, I think, would like to have that defined black and white. The touchdown points, the approaches. Is it going to come out of that funding, or is that yet some additional expense that's going to require some additional funding, and then where's that source going to be?
Yeah, and I think the final say is from MDOT, and I think in order to ask them that question, we need to have a more accurate depiction of what the bridge is potentially going to cost, meaning we need to have design plans in hand ideally.
And
So-
I think that's a question that we would have to take to MDOT, since we have the money.
Chris?
I just have a comment that I'd like the road commissioners to hear. As the lone resident of the city of Traverse City, I would greatly appreciate it if you would take into consideration traffic in the city of Traverse City. I heard Jim say that if that bridge is not put back, that east to west traffic in all likelihood is going to go down 8th Street?
8th Street.
503 West 8th Street here, folks. Central neighborhood. It's a neighborhood. And South Airport. Cass Road, I want you all to remember, is a neighborhood. It's full of houses with people that live in them. And, you know, I like to keep traffic on main roads. I mean, South Airport doesn't have a lot of residences on it. So I'm just tossing it out there. Please take into consideration traffic flow patterns and take into consideration neighborhoods. That's all.
Chris, duly noted, and since you brought that up, let me share with you and the rest of the body some information. These are preliminary, but we just saw some initial transportation models that came out of the MDOT. And I believe there were 9 of them. Matt's out there, but there were 9 of them, right, Matt? Of the 9, one of those was to, Cass Road Crossing. And what we saw immediately was, yes, there would be a larger increase of cars on Cass Road, but it didn't necessarily it didn't tell us what was going to happen in the city, driving into Cass all the way. What we did see is that it was going to balloon the number of cars out there in Keystone. So, in essence, that bridge, although it serves a local purpose, is going to increase the amount of traffic out on that local roads, the 2 local roads. But the regional corridor connector was also 2 or 3, Matt. There were 3 different runs on that particular connector, on the Hammond-Hartman connector, okay? And what happened is that the entire city traffic shrank drastically. But the numbers were from like 5,000 to 100,000, so we couldn't get quantitative information. We were just looking at lines on a map. But overall, the plan would be to reroute 37, reroute 31, off of Division, out on Munson Avenue, run them across from south of Hartman Road, run it down into part of Hartman Road, across the river into Hammond Road. That's where 37 or 31 would go across. That wouldn't be just a minor arterial connector, folks. That would be an MDOT state highway. And the city of Traverse City would be relieved of that on Division and Munson Avenue. So Division would return to a local street. in Garfield Township and in the city. That is a quality of life issue that you can't fully comprehend until it happens, okay? The next point is that Garfield is the natural turnoff for 37 because it goes right up the peninsula. 3 Mile would be 31 going out and reconnect out on 3 Mile and Munson Avenue. So is it a world-class perfect solution? No. But these are 4-lane roads that we're talking about connecting. They match the grand vision. One of the things is to take 2 corridors and connect them. If this wasn't a bridge crossing over a beautiful river, we would be looking at it, but not so much through the microscope. But because of what it is, it's a natural area, we need to look through a microscope at this, but we don't need to say it's an impasse because of the river, because we're not saying it's an impasse because of this bridge. So why would it be on another, especially if we have the full support of MDOT to reroute those state highways and make it a more fluid opportunity. And the zoning, you know, in Garfield Township and in East Bay Township can support that MDOT change to those being highways, and it will be beneficial overall. It's a long-term goal, but we have to look at it. But the city residents would benefit just tremendously, in our entire community, because, you know, Traverse City is the epicenter of what's going on up here. And division would no longer be splitting the communities in half.
I'm going to turn it back to Dave.
Okay. We're going to have Matt come up here and talk a little bit about regional transportation issues. I don't know if
Thank you.
Matt wants
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
I don't particularly have any prepared statement to read, so Matt Skeels, I'm the coordinator for TC Talos. Just to give you a little bit of history, I know probably most of you know this, but years ago, in response to the Hartman-Hammond connection being on the Garfield Township plan, the plans from Grand Traverse County, as well as on the TC Talos plan, the Road Commission initiated environmental studies to do the necessary, get the necessary clearances to build a Hartman-Hammond connection. It went through the NEPA process, as Kim discussed earlier. It started out in an environmental assessment, then it was elevated to an environmental impact statement, and at the very end of the environmental impact statement, the Road Commission decided to pause further study. So I believe the Road Commission is still in the pause mode. The studies, I will say, as Jim pointed out, are downstairs in the basement. And to elevate that, or to dust those studies off and refresh them, to look at Hartman-Hammond again, I'm sure there would be some cost to that. I don't know what that would be, but there would be some cost. I think you would have to refresh them, basically. And that's notwithstanding, that's just to get to the level of being able to say yes or no. Once that's done, then you have to find construction funds, of course. And that's a pretty large chunk of money. And so that's a hurdle that certainly can be addressed in the future, or you know, as we want to proceed basically from tonight forward. So Talos has done, as been mentioned, Mr. McKellar and Mr. Cook mentioned, we have tested a number of options on our travel demand model that MDOT runs for us. We just got our first set of those results back last week. My technical committee looked at them on Wednesday of last week. They got them on Tuesday, so they didn't have a lot to review. We're having the MDOT person come up in July, and we're going to look at them more in detail. We want to make sure that everything we're seeing is correct. And with any model, mathematical model that you do, you really have to make sure that everything is correct before you go publicizing and making decisions based on the results of those models. So I'm not willing to stake my reputation on the results of the model that came out last Tuesday. But I will generally say that in my 20 years experience with these models in the past, they're pretty darn good. They're as good as the assumptions you put into them, and in the past they have been pretty darn good. We have that model available. We can test. We tested, just for the heck of it, we tested extending South Airport Road to 5 Mile Road. We tested Mr. Thomas's project going down the railroad tracks. We tested that one. We tested widening Beitner and Keystone to 3-lane road to 3 lanes. We tested Hartman Hammond. We did some what's the word I'm looking for? Road diets. I'm sorry, on Garfield Road and on 8th Street in the city. Those were projects that actually the city asked us to do, and so we have the results for them. I'm happy to share them right now, as they are, again, preliminary, but we should have them, I'd say, finalized within the next month to month and a half. At that point, we would be able to use that model for to test any kind of project that comes up. Any variation of anything. We could close the Cass Road Bridge. We can wash out South Airport Road with a punch of a button. And see what happens. And generally speaking, as I say, the results of those models are pretty accurate. So, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
John?
Just a question, Matt. Do you recall when the EIS of Hammond Hartman was prepared and DEQ reviewed it, do you remember what the DEQ review basically told us about that EIS?
Yeah, as I recall, that was sort of the DEQ's letter. I don't remember the gentleman that wrote the letter, but the letter said basically the study was flawed, and that they were not going to be issuing a permit for the things that they issue permits for. And I'm not sure if it's wetlands or endangered species or whatever that might be. And that was where I believe that was the reason that the Road Commission, on the advice of the County Commission at the time, got together and they understood that if they were going to push forward with this, they were probably going to be in the legal system. Lawsuits were going to happen. And at that point, I think everybody kind of lost the will to move forward.
But Matt, also, wasn't that for the low bridge, and it was not looking at the higher bridge?
I believe that is correct.
And I think that was the flaw.
There were a number of
That was the
options
flaw.
that basically, the high bridge spanned the entire river valley with a bridge on piers, and then there was a couple of different options, a medium bridge and a low bridge, where there was just bridges over the river and a couple of creeks and then fill in between, which of course is the least expensive option.
But also, that was that DEQ person. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't say that the person today would have the same opinion.
I don't know, but that's probably a fair statement.
Well, if I might, also, Matt, when you first started out, you mentioned all the studies. Well, we were going to have to go back and probably more than just dust them off. We can look at them, but I think the fact is that we would like to have a brand new perspective on it. So, you know, and to John's point, he's accurate in that, you know, the letter came and it was pretty hard on the fact that the Road Commission may have not done their due diligence. Well, based on our actions this last few weeks, we're going to do our due diligence. So I would think that there's nobody on the Road Commission that wants to put a bridge that's going to adversely impact our environment, because, you know, our environment is our economy. So that's kind of where I'm looking at right now.
I did drop those studies off to Mr. Benda in his office. So there's one book is that thick and one book's about that thick. So if he has trouble sleeping at night, I'm sure
Nighttime reading.
he's got plenty of time to read that.
And I don't want to
But,
make
I
it...
mean, if some of the commissioners wanted to look at that, I'm sure Dave would be willing to save that. And then also, I'm sure
It's
that-
actually more interesting than it sounds.
It is very interesting. I mean, there's some good information in that study that they did. And the traffic study that you're looking at, the modeling, if you could invite the commissioners to be part of that presentation from MDOT, so I think we all become more aware of it, those who'd be interested to come, I think it'd be important for us to be there to see what the what-if scenarios when you start playing with that.
And I just wanted to say, people have told me in the past that when I talk about the NEPA process, that it sounds like I'm bashing the NEPA process or I'm negative towards it. That's not the case at all. The NEPA process is a really good thing to go through, because if Matt Skeels were to hit the Powerball and decide I wanted to build the Hartman-Hammond Bridge, I could do that, but I'd have to go to the Fish and Wildlife Service to get a permit. I'd have to go to the DEQ to get a permit. I'd have to go to the Corps of Engineers to get a different permit. And when that happens, everybody's going to say, oh, you need to do it here, you need to do it there. And so you end up running back and forth between these agencies. But the NEPA process really condenses that all into one process. So everybody comes to the table and you decide on the best option. So it's a long process, it's an expensive process, but it's a good process, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that today at TC Talus, Lee Bowen put it really well, he chairs TC Talus. He said we need to look at a solution to east-west mobility. He didn't put any particular solution to that on the table. There may be a number of solutions, and the board basically voted to direct its technical committee to take a look at east-west mobility, all the different possible solutions, to include Hammond-Hartman, perhaps Dick's idea, improving the Beitner-Keystone corridor, redesign and re-engineering and taking a look at South Airport Road. There's a number of solutions that the technical committee will look at. So I've always been one that you don't pick a solution before you look at the problem carefully. So Talus will be looking at that, its technical committee, as an east-west mobility problem.
Any questions for Matt?
I just have a question for Dave. But,
Okay.
I think this session has been very good, and it's been very informative, and it really got everybody up to speed as to where everything's at with the IT team and what we did in the past and why we did it, and their reaffirmation of why they think, at least at this point, we need to move forward with the replacement of that Cass Bridge. And the county boards already has a resolution in place, along with the city, affirming the direction of the removal of the dams, and I think they have a resolution in place already affirming the direction of replacement of the bridge. So I guess if there's something else we need to talk about, I think you have your direction already, I think, based on this meeting. Is that correct?
Well, that's true. It's the acceptance of the grant,
Okay.
and the IT needs, either we're closing that road or we're building a bridge on it, and we're going to plan to, design it that way. And we need to know that very quickly. Because we've got a lot of things going on that right now, a delay in this project means it has so many ripple effects that...
So we just need to wait on the road commission to weigh on that and make their decision.
Yeah.
Well, we have a resolution in support of the bridge, but we also have these statements that, if people are going out and getting grants and that, if they're match grants and that, then they're going to have to find match.
Right.
Because ours is the 3.1.
Right.
That's it. So,
And if your resolution states that?
I heard the 150,000 for engineering. I don't know where the money's coming from, but I know it's not in our budget.
Yeah, the 95%, the 5%'s got to be raised. And,
Correct.
And the engineering costs have to be raised.
Correct.
And what I'm gathering from CRA is the same thing that happened at Brown Bridge is happening in this project. They have a lot of funders. They approach them with the project. Those funders are looking at the full scope of the project. They're looking at the removal of those dams and the restoration of that river to its natural state. And they're very interested in that whole project. Now, it's going to have pieces to it, a bridge here, a powerhouse there. They can't promise you, that they're going to find every dime that is going to be needed for this project, but they're going to try. And that's the best we can ask for right now. And they were successful in the Brown Bridge project, and they've been quite successful so far getting this project started, this part of the project.
This is kind of a question for Kim, I guess, is that it sounds to me that you need our commission to accept MDOT's bridge grant officially. So I'll make a motion to that this evening, and we'll get that started.
This is a study session, so.
Yeah.
Study session, okay.
Yeah,
then
you
I
can do
won't.
that at your next.
Then we'll do that,
regular
we'll
board
take
meeting.
care of that. We'll take care of that, we'll get at least a motion out on the table. But when they go through the engineering study, and they come back with the potential that, this, although it looks like a great site, we've done our samples and everything, and we come back and say to us, this isn't the best place to build a bridge for whatever reasons they find in the earth. Are we prepared then to go back to MDOT and say, we accepted this grant, the Road Commission potentially accepted this grant, but we found that where we want to build this bridge isn't acceptable from an engineering perspective. Are we prepared to go back as a group and say, okay, wipe the board clean, and now we're going to talk about a connector that's going to serve a local and a regional purpose? Because we'll have to go back, we could lose it. We would lose that grant if we didn't put it right at the spot that they're designating, but it might not be suitable is what I'm stating.
Well, I mean, that's why with these initial phases, that's why you do the steps in a certain fashion so that we know what the site conditions are and if they're amenable to a bridge structure. And it's why the working group of the IT and the IT is going through such a detailed process to select and evaluate a qualified engineering firm. So, I mean, there can be all sorts of changes along the way, and I guess my perspective is if we assemble the right team, qualified, experienced, hardworking, attention to detail team, then we will assess the completed tasks as we go, and we'll know what we can and can't do.
Well, if they come back and say, this team that you described, do the due diligence and do everything necessary from an engineering perspective and say, you really can't build a dam or a bridge at this site.
You really can't build a bridge?
Really cannot.
Oh, well, then we
build
wouldn't
this.
do it.
Okay, are we prepared though? So that we can go back, although we've accepted, our board has accepted the grant, now we find we can't use that grant at that location. Are we prepared to go back as a community and fight to keep those funds to put a bridge in another place?
That's really, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but that's really MDOT's jurisdiction. This essentially is their money, and they have requirements attached to that. And for me, working throughout 13 counties the last 17 years, I see Cass Road Bridge not competing with another bridge in Traverse City. It's competing with other failing bridges on rivers in Michigan, and there's a plethora of them, unfortunately. So I think if something drastic were to be uncovered at the site and a new bridge could not be built at all, I'm going out on a limb here, but I think MDOT would be okay taking their funds back, and there would be many more road commissions in the state that would use those funds.
And that's completely out of our control.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, my guess is, we probably, just because of the materials that are in this area, it's probably not a concern. But, engineers will tell you that there's nothing money can't solve. So we would probably be going back and asking for more money if there was some issue.
John?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize something that was said earlier, and I think Jim's addressed it already, and that's Bill's concerns about control of the actual construction of the bridge and structuring our relationship with the IT so that the Road Commission has control over the actual construction, design, and so forth of the bridge.
Yes.
And we can do that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, again, we have a different type of situation here with all the different partners, but typically in CRA's other road crossing projects, we work with the road commission to select the engineering firm, and then typically they hold the contract with the engineering firm. And we have, knock on wood, a pretty good relationship with a lot of our county road commissions, and so there isn't really a concern of what if the bridge isn't designed to someone's liking, because we know we're all in it together, we're sharing the financial burden. And so we look to design a bridge and meet our budget that can fit everyone's needs. So, I know this is a very complex project, but it's been done in other communities. I mean, dams and bridges often go hand in hand, and I've talked to other communities that have done dam removal and a critical bridge project. 2 months ago, I was looking at a dam that we're talking about maybe removing in the Pure Marquette watershed someday, and it doesn't matter if the dam owner wants to remove it now anyway, because we can't do it until we replace our bridge downstream. So I can give you half a dozen examples in our service area, big and small, of dam removals directly related to road crossing work. Because they're often close to roads, you're changing the flow of water, so you've got to reconfigure everything. I mean, I've had $20,000, $30,000 dam removals that we've had to then go downstream and sometimes upstream and replace those culverts and structures, bottomless structures sometimes, because we switched the stream from when it was funneled through a mill, so.
Okay.
So it's doable. I think it's doable. So.
All right. What I want to know is, you guys ask what you need to do to get this moving, and I'd like to know what is it that we need to do as a county commission to get this moving. And we're doing a lot of talking. How do we get it moving?
We don't need to do anything. We have a standing resolution that says the dams
we got a
are coming
resolution.
out.
We don't need a vote. Nothing.
No, we already have that in place.
No, the whole purpose of this was to study whether now was a good time to stop and look at the projects and decide if we wanted to change anything. And I think, it's certainly up to the road commission, but I'm convinced that we kind of have to replace the Cass Road Bridge, or there's a laundry list of cons and very few pros. And certainly we still have the east-west corridor problem, which is, some people would tie it together. I would say that's another issue that has to be addressed.
Jim?
Yeah, just as far as steps moving forward, what I would propose is, I've already started the process with our attorney, working on a draft agreement between the county and the road commission regarding the bridge replacement and what our roles and expectations and what the scope is and if it covers approaches and all. So I'll work with Mr. Benda and our board and our attorney and come up with a draft agreement. And then I guess once our board approves it, then we would bring it to the county commissioners for approval.
The only comment I have on that one is whether or not you should use our attorney instead of using your money for an attorney.
You mean Bob Cooney?
So we use Mr. Cooney for that.
Chris is sitting back there, he has nothing else.
Chris is over here and he's going, no. But I'm just wondering if that might be more economically feasible to be able to. The problem with that is avoiding the conflict. But they're, okay.
Yeah, and I already started the process, so.
Okay, whatever.
I think we'll be working with the county's attorney.
Because you're going to want
well.
to talk to Chris anyway through the whole process.
Yeah.
So, okay. The bottom line, I think the one statement that you made earlier, Jim, was that we can't eliminate one of our crossings. We need to have all the crossings we can have and protect those. And that's one of the reasons why we want to have the bridge. So, Sonny?
I guess, I think what we've pretty much hammered out here is there's no question we need the Cass Road Bridge.
Right.
We're moving forward with that. Our regional corridor, I think all of us still have a lot of comments and questions about where that regional corridor should be and all of those kind of issues, but they are separate issues. Let's move forward with this. And, I don't disagree that we need to work on the regional corridors, and the mapping or the modeling that Matt's talking about, we have the ability with that new mapping to punch in dozens of different options of where that corridor should be. You know, whether, maybe we should be down at Center Road just north of Buckley and be going across to South Boardman somewhere. You know, I don't know. You know, but the fact is
It's
that...
not your district, is it?
Not anymore. But the point is that, you know, somewhere along the way, we still have to address the regional transportation needs of this community, and it's not something that we're going to settle here in the next 20 minutes this evening.
I'm going to wrap up this discussion if we can get to the final questions. Do we have any final questions here on our board or your board? Because we did offer that we want to allow the public to have some comments. Dave, do you have any final comments?
I don't have any. I think it's, I think you've touched on all the points that you'd wanted to talk about tonight, and I don't know that we can add anything more to it.
Jim, did you have any more comments?
Not tonight.
So I'm going to, Bonnie, if you'd read the public comment requirements, I would appreciate that.
Microphone?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I lost him. Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. A, any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. B, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairman shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Thank you. So if we could have public comment, anybody here in the public that would like to make comment at this time? Chuck?
Nice tie.
Thank you very much.
She's always well dressed.
I do want to thank everyone for the discussion tonight. I thought it was a very earnest and frank discussion, which happy to see. About a year ago, I questioned some letters that were being written to the county commission about why the bridge had to be built at Cass Road. And in an effort to engage, all I heard was, we decided this a long time ago. Never mind, don't talk about it. If you do talk about it, you're going to get killed. So, thank you very much. I'm still alive, you're still alive. And maybe everybody can start to talk about it now, all people who have been afraid to talk. I'm really excited to hear that this project is not related to the Hartman-Hammond Bridge, because it's got a little different set of rules. I mean, people were very upset that any dirt would hit the ground around the Hartman-Hammond Bridge, but we can fill in places with dirt at this end. I heard people question, well, on the Hartman-Hammond Bridge, the snowplows are going to push salt and slush into the river. Do we know where the plows are going to push the salt and slush now? It's agreed. We're going to build a bridge. But I hope we all keep an open mind going forward.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Any other public would like to speak? Then I guess we're ready for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, audience, for being here.
All right. Agreement? Let's get going. Oh, yeah. I go there once or twice a year. That's my favorite hotel.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't gone to the Wynn yet, so it's nice to have you, but I like the Bellagio.